Look, for us, like I said, for many people, for whom, like, who are having a one-off time with Janneh's asset, this is unusual. But for us, this is the third story we published. The first story we published is about the sale of the livestock. The second story we published is the sale of the aircraft, which we revisited in this other story. The third story we published sought to look at how the receiver was hired, who is the receiver, how much money he reported, how much money he made, reportedly made, based on the calculations we have made, based on the agreement he had with the Ministry of Justice. Right? And then we go to the sale of the vehicles and the sale of the tractors, and the sale of the aircraft.
And the properties.
And then so that is how, so for us it was not as though we were targeting
it was more
Minister
just,
Tambiedu. I mean, in any case, he was the one in charge of the process.
He was.
So it's not, there is no way you could edit him out of the story. But in a sense, that is what we were looking at. So for us, it's a logical sequence. You look at the hiring of the receiver, how the receiver was hired, and the role of the Ministry of Justice at that time in the process, and the fallout he had with the court, Amina and
Sabo.
Yes, Amina.
And then Justice Jete.
And also the land that we thought were sold.
And that particular, before you go, I want to come there because it is important, because obviously the former Justice Ministers did send in rebuttal. We'll look at that, but it's important to look at that aspect. The receiver, Prompt, was the first receiver, right? And he was paid 10%. But at some point, I think in the commission, there were issues that were raised because Ocean Bay especially...
Not just Ocean Bay. Hotels were complaining and some institutions were complaining that it was a rip-off.
Salary. They were giving all their money to receiver. And the commission engaged and made sure his payment was reduced from 10% to 3%.
Yeah, that was a claim, that was a request.
That was a request the commission made.
Yeah.
And at some point he had accepted. But the fact that you had somebody who had accepted to stay at 3%, and now the ministry coming in with a new receiver and paying that receiver 10%, even to the point of going to court to fight, and then, ignoring an order from a judge or just ignoring it and going to file a fresh case somewhere. That mentality there itself. What happened there? What really happened?
So let's unpack it. I think now, the Ministry of Justice froze some assets.
Yes.
It's not all of the assets. It's just some list of assets.
Yeah.
And so the court, when the court freezes an asset, they appoint a receiver. A receiver is like an independent person who is going to act on your behalf. On behalf of the person whose asset is frozen, so that it's taking care of all those things, and that happens. And so that was Augustus Prom.
Yeah.
Now, and now what Amina felt, and of course the former Justice Minister disagree with this interpretation, but what Amina felt was that she appointed a receiver which was later sacked by the minister. But the minister is saying, no, that didn't happen. It was an interim injunction, so she was Augustus Prom was appointed, and then the appointment expires. And then naturally, if the appointment expires, so does the receivership. The interim order expires, so does the receivership. Yeah, and so in any case, the Ministry of Justice hired Alpha Kapital Advisory. And of course, the former minister says they didn't. The ministerial committee is the one that hired. So we only write what we see.
Yeah.
As far as we are concerned, the letter that we saw that was written to Alpha by Binga D, who was actually at the time the ministry's focal person on the sale of Janneh's assets, says that you are hereby appointed by the Honorable Minister of Justice. It didn't say we are conveying this to you on behalf of the ministerial committee.
Oh.
So we wrote that, yes, it was appointed by a former minister.
Former minister.
Yeah. So people can go, the letter is in the story, you can go and read it for themselves. And so, yeah, so that's how we think the receiver was high. There were a lot of back and forth arguments. You can't have everything in this story, but there are a lot of back and forth arguments because, you know, we already have precedents regarding asset recovery in the country. I mean, we know Janneh made an investigation here, and that's how AMRC was created.
And that's my question. AMRC is set up by government, right? And this is exactly their role, right? Why was it necessary in the first place to have a receiver instead of using AMRC?
So this is the point. Now, the explanation of the former minister was that AMRC is conflicted because AMRC is itself indicted by the Janneh Commission, except that the commission didn't have enough time. Whether or not they are indicted, but he's saying they have something to answer.
That's what he said.
But whether or not, there was no enough time for Janneh Commission to look into it. So therefore, it will be inappropriate for them to be in charge of the sale. For as far as I am concerned, that's neither here nor there. I mean, a lot of institutions, a lot of individuals in almost all the institutions are implicated in Janneh's, including Ministry of Finance, including former Minister of Finance.
Yes.
So you don't say because former Minister of Finance,
including so many people right now at State House. In
so
government.
you can
everybody is indicted.
Exactly.
Almost
so
everybody.
it does still state has a precedent in managing assets and in disposing of them. I mean, come to think of it. So the amount of money that in total we calculated, Alpha didn't respond to our queries. He said we were biased, but depending on, I mean, I don't know how much he finally got, but based on our calculation, he got around 89 million. So basically 90 million. That's close to 2 times. That's almost 2 times the entire money we spent on the Janneh Commission.
Oh my God. So,
so for example,
can you say this again?
That money could go to government.
Alpha Kapital, they only sold 44 properties.
Something like
that's what they said.
Well, not
about
40,
that is something.
Shares, properties,
about 40. Used everything. 44.
Vehicles,
But they made 89, almost 90 million.
That's based on our calculations.
And that is way almost double the price that we spent.
I think, if I recall properly, everything we spent on Janneh Commission from the beginning to end was 50 million.
So the entire Janneh Commission expenditure itself, Alpha Kapital made more, almost double that price. How reasonable is that for any country?
Yeah, you could say maybe he made. I mean, if you subtract the tax, if you subtract the tax and everything,
they paid only what, 2 million? That's what.
Yeah, but if you take all of the tax, regardless of how much he got to pay, it would certainly not be more than 9 million. 9 million. So,
well, how reasonable is that for any country?
Well, I don't know, but that's what most people are saying. That's why people are saying that this should have been handled by government itself. You see, but of course, I mean, you know, this is not a fact; it's an argument. It's an argument. So you can say something, and the former minister can take exceptions to that and say, no, I don't think that's appropriate. Like he said, he doesn't think it's appropriate, but we think it's appropriate.
It's appropriate.
So I mean, you know.